The air was thick with the scent of rain-soaked asphalt, and I woke to the soft scratch of charcoal on papyrus sound so faint it might have been a dream. But then I saw him. Ezra, my roommate, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside my bed. His sketchbook open. His eyes locked on me. He was drawing me, his hand moving in quiet, deliberate strokes, capturing something I didn't even know I'd revealed in my sleep. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. We'd been roommates for 6 months in this cramped apartment in Asheville, North Carolina, a town buzzing with art and rebellion. Ezra was the kind of guy who wore his heart like a neon sign bold. Colorful, unapologetic. Me, I was Caleb, the quiet one, the guy who kept his head down, his secrets buried under layers of flannel and half-hearted smiles. I'd spent my life dodging questions about who I was, especially from myself. But now, under Ezra's gaze, I felt exposed, like he'd peeled back my skin to sketch the truth underneath. "Don't move," he whispered, his voice low, almost reverent. "You look perfect like this." His brown eyes flickered with something I couldn't name, something that made my chest tighten and my pulse race. I should have laughed it off, rolled over, or told him to quit being weird. Instead, I lay there, heart pounding, letting him see me in a way no one ever had. Asheville was a strange place to end up. I'd come here for college, chasing a degree in environmental science. But really, I was running from my small-town Virginia roots, from my dad's sermons about sin, from the weight of expectations that felt like chains. Ezra was the opposite. Born in Atlanta, raised by a single mom who taught him to paint before he could write. He wore his queerness like a badge of honor. His half of the apartment was a chaos of color canvases stacked against walls, fairy lights strung above his bed, a rainbow flag pinned proudly above his desk. Mine was bare, practical, like I was afraid to leave a mark. We'd clicked instantly, though. Late-night talks about music, shared takeout from the Thai place down the street, and his endless teasing about my lumberjack aesthetic. But there was always a line I didn't cross, a wall I'd built to keep things simple, safe. Until now. I sat up slowly, the bed springs creaking. "What are you doing, man?" My voice came out rough, like I'd swallowed gravel. Ezra didn't look up, his pencil still moving. "Drawing you. You were, I don't know. You looked peaceful. Real." He paused, his hand hovering over the page. I couldn't help it. I swallowed hard, glancing at the sketchbook. The lines were soft but sure, capturing the curve of my jaw, the way my hair fell across my forehead. It wasn't just a drawing, it was me, raw and unguarded, like he'd seen past every defense I'd ever put up. My throat tightened. "You do this a lot. Sketch people while they're sleeping." He laughed, soft and nervous. "Only the ones worth capturing." His eyes met mine, and for a moment, the world shrank to just us, the hum of the radiator, the faint patter of rain outside, the weight of his gaze. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the tension, but my words felt stuck, tangled in a truth I wasn't ready to face. That morning changed everything. I couldn't shake the image of Ezra's sketch, the way he'd looked at me like I was more than just the guy who paid half the rent. Over the next few days, I caught myself watching him, how his hands moved when he painted, how his laugh filled the room, how his pride flag seemed to glow in the morning light. It scared me. How much I noticed. How much I wanted to notice. We didn't talk about the sketch. I didn't know how. Instead, we fell back into our routine classes, coffee runs, late-night jam sessions where he'd strum his guitar and I'd pretend I wasn't staring. But there was a new undercurrent, a quiet electricity that sparked every time our eyes met. I started waking up earlier, hoping to catch him sketching again, hoping he'd see me again, the way he had that morning. One night, after too many beers and a marathon of old sci-fi movies, Ezra sprawled on the couch, his head tipped back, his throat exposed. "Caleb," he said, his voice lazy but deliberate, You ever think about what you're running from? I froze, my beer halfway to my lips. What? You're always holding back, like you're scared to just be. He turned to look at me, his eyes sharp despite the alcohol. What's got you so afraid? I wanted to brush it off, to laugh and change the subject. But his words hit too close, slicing through the walls I'd built. I'm not afraid. I lied, my voice barely above a whisper. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. Liar, he said softly, but there was no malice in it, just a challenge. A dare to be honest. For a second, I thought he might kiss me. For a second, I wanted him to. But then he pulled back, grabbing his guitar and strumming a random chord. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just cracked me open. The rest of that week, I was a mess. I couldn't focus in class. My notes a jumble of half-finished thoughts. I kept replaying that moment on the couch. The way Ezra's voice had softened. The way his eyes had searched mine. I'd spent my whole life pushing down feelings I didn't understand. Telling myself they were wrong. Sinful. Dangerous. But now, living with Ezra, those feelings were clawing their way to the surface. And I didn't know how to stop them. I started avoiding him. I'd leave for class early. Stay late at the library. Anything to keep my distance. But Asheville was small. And our apartment was smaller. There was no escaping Heimer the truth. One evening, I came home to find Ezra painting, his hands smeared with blue and gold. He looked up, his expression unreadable. You've been dodging me, he said, not accusing, just stating a fact. I haven't, I started. But he cut me off. Don't. I know you. Caleb. Better than you think. He set his brush down, stepping closer. What's going on? Did I do something? My chest ached. He thought he was the problem. It's not you, I said, my voice cracking. It's me. I don't know what I'm doing. He tilted his head, studying me. Then let me help you figure it out. And just like that, the walls I'd built started to crumble. I stood there, frozen in the middle of our tiny living room. Ezra's words hanging between us like a lifeline I was too scared to grab. The air smelled of acrylic paint, and the faint tang of coffee left too long on the counter. His eyes, warm and steady, held mine. And for the first time, I didn't want to look away. I don't know how to do this, I admitted, my voice barely audible. I don't even know what this is. Ezra stepped closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his irises, the faint scar above his eyebrow from a childhood fall. You don't have to know, he said. Not yet. Just don't run from it. I wanted to argue, to tell him it wasn't that simple. Growing up in my dad's house, I'd learned to bury anything that didn't fit his rigid view of the world. Love was supposed to be clean, predictable, a man and a woman, a church wedding, a life mapped out in straight lines. But what I felt for Ezra was messy, wild, like a river breaking its banks. It terrified me, but it also felt like the truest thing I'd ever known. The next few days were a blur of tension and stolen glances. I stopped avoiding Ezra, but I didn't know how to bridge the gap between us either. He seemed to sense it, giving me space but never letting me retreat too far. He'd leave me notes on the fridge, dumb stuff like, buy more cereal, you savage, or a quick sketch of a grumpy cat that looked suspiciously like me. Each one chipped away at my defenses, making it harder to pretend I didn't feel something. One afternoon, we ended up at a local art fair, a chaotic sprawl of booths and live music in downtown Asheville. Ezra was in his element, chatting with artists, his hands animated as he talked about color theory and brush techniques. I trailed behind, carrying his sketchbook like some kind of assistant, feeling out of place but oddly content just to watch him shine. You should try it, he said, catching me staring at a vibrant abstract painting. Drawing. I mean, you've got an eye for it. I snorted. I can barely draw a stick figure. He grinned, nudging my shoulder. Doesn't matter. It's not about being good. It's about saying something. He handed me a pencil and a scrap of paper from his bag. Go on. Draw what you're feeling right now. I hesitated, the pencil heavy in my hand. What was I feeling? Fear. Hope. The pull of something I couldn't name. I sketched a jagged line, then another, until it formed a rough outline of a heart cracked down the middle. It was messy, childish, but Ezra's face lit up like I'd painted a masterpiece. See, he said, his voice soft. You've got something to say. That night, back at the apartment, we sat on the fire escape, the cool autumn air sharp against our skin. Ezra was sipping a beer, his knees pulled up, his gaze fixed on the stars above the Blue Ridge Mountains. I wanted to ask him a million things: how he'd known he was gay, how he'd found the courage to live so openly, how he could look at me like I was worth something when I felt so broken. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I said, "Tell me about your first crush." He laughed, surprised, then leaned back, his shoulder brushing mine. Middle school. This kid named Jamal. He was on the basketball team, all confidence and swagger. I'd watch him during practice, pretending I was just there for the game. He paused, his smile fading. I told him once, in a stupid, impulsive moment. He didn't take it well. Called me names, pushed me away. It hurt, but it also made me realize I couldn't hide who I was. Not forever. I swallowed, my throat tight. Weren't you scared? Terrified, he admitted. But hiding was worse. It's like living half a life. You deserve more than that, Caleb. His words hit like a punch. I stared at the city lights below, my mind racing. I'd spent so long hiding from my dad, from myself, from the world. But sitting there with Ezra, I didn't want to hide anymore. I wanted to be seen. The next morning, I woke to find another sketch on my nightstand. This time, it was the two of us on the fire escape, our silhouettes outlined against the starry sky. Ezra's lines were bold, capturing the way we'd leaned into each other, the space between us charged with possibility. At the bottom, in his messy scrawl, he'd written, "You're braver than you think." I held the paper, my hands trembling. I didn't feel brave. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath me. But for the first time, I wanted to jump. I found Ezra in the kitchen, flipping pancakes, humming some indie song under his breath. "You left this," I said, holding up the sketch. He glanced over, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, thought you might need a reminder." "Of what?" "That you're not alone." He turned off the stove, stepping closer. "Whatever you're figuring out, Caleb, I'm here. No pressure. No judgment." My breath hitched. I wanted to tell him everything: how his sketches made me feel seen, how his laugh made my chest ache, how I was terrified of what it all meant. But all I could manage was, "Thanks." He smiled, soft and knowing, and went back to his pancakes. But the air between us had shifted again, heavier now, like a storm gathering on the horizon. The storm broke on a Friday night. Asheville was alive with its usual weekend chaos: buskers on street corners, bars spilling laughter into the humid air. Ezra had dragged me to a local gallery opening, some friend of his displaying vibrant, chaotic paintings that looked like emotions thrown onto canvas. I felt out of my depth, clutching a plastic cup of cheap wine, watching Ezra move through the crowd like he belonged there. He was talking to a group of artists, his hands gesturing wildly, his laugh cutting through the chatter. I stood by a painting of a shattered mirror, the shards reflecting fragmented faces, and I couldn't help but feel like it was me, piecing myself together in secret. Ezra caught my eye from across the room, his smile softening, and he broke away to join me. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low enough to feel private despite the crowd. I nodded, but my grip on the cup tightened. "Just a lot of people." He tilted his head, studying me. "Want to get out of here?" I didn't hesitate. Yeah. We ended up at a quiet diner on the edge of town. The kind with sticky tables and a jukebox that only played Johnny Cash. We ordered milkshake Escalade for me, strawberry for him, and sat in a booth by the window, the neon sign outside casting a pink glow across his face. He was quieter than usual, his fingers tracing patterns on the table. You ever feel like you're waiting for something to happen? He asked, his eyes fixed on the condensation dripping down his glass. Like you're holding your breath, hoping the world will make sense. I stared at him, my heart thudding. All the time. He looked up, his gaze piercing. What are you waiting for, Caleb? The question hung there, heavy and unyielding. I wanted to tell him I was waiting for courage, for clarity, for a sign that I wouldn't ruin everything by admitting what I felt. But the words caught in my throat, and all I could do was shake my head. Ezra leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to have it all figured out, but you've got to let yourself feel something, even if it scares you. I opened my mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed, shattering the moment. It was a text from my dad. Call me. We need to talk about your future. My stomach twisted. I hadn't spoken to him in months, not since our last fight about my directionless life. I shoved the phone back in my pocket, but Ezra noticed. Everything okay? He asked. Just my dad. I muttered. Same old crap. He nodded, like he understood more than I'd said. Family can be complicated. I laughed. Bitter. That's one way to put it. Later, back at the apartment, I couldn't sleep. My dad's text gnawed at me, dragging up memories of his voice, harsh, unyielding, preaching about salvation while I sat silent, hiding who I was. I tossed and turned, the weight of it all pressing down on me. Around 2 a.m., I gave up and wandered into the living room, where Ezra was still awake, painting by the light of a single lamp. He looked up, paint smudged on his cheek. Can't sleep. I shook my head, sitting on the couch. My dad wants me to call him, probably to lecture me about how I'm wasting my life. Ezra set his brush down, wiping his hands on a rag. What's his deal? I hesitated, then let it spill. He's a pastor. Old school. Thinks college is turning me into some godless liberal. If he knew. I stopped, my throat closing up. If he knew about the feelings I was grappling with, about Ezra, he'd call it an abomination. He'd disown me. Ezra's expression softened. If he knew what? I looked away, my hands clenching. You know? He moved to sit beside me, close enough that our knees touched. Caleb, you don't have to tell him anything. Not until you're ready. But you can't let him control who you are. I don't even know who I am, I said, my voice breaking. I've spent my whole life trying to be what he wanted. And now I'm here, with you, and I feel things I'm not supposed to feel. Ezra's hand found mine, his touch warm and steady. There's no supposed to when it comes to this. You feel what you feel, and that's enough. I looked at our hands, his fingers intertwined with mine, and something inside me shifted. For the first time, I didn't pull away. The next morning, I called my dad. It was a mistake. His voice was cold, demanding I come home for Thanksgiving, insisting I get my head straight before I ruin my life. I hung up mid-sentence, my hands shaking. Ezra was at class, and the apartment felt too quiet, too empty. I grabbed his sketchbook, flipping through pages of his art landscapes, portraits, moments of our life together captured in charcoal and ink. On the last page, I found another sketch of me, this one from the diner, my eyes soft and searching, a faint smile on my lips. I didn't hear Ezra come home. He leaned over the couch, his breath warm against my ear. Snooping. Huh. I jumped, closing the sketchbook. Just looking. He sat beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. You okay? I shook my head, the weight of my dad's words crashing over me. I don't know how to do this. Ezra, I don't know how to be me. He reached for my hand again, his grip firm. You're already you. You just have to let yourself see it. And then, before I could overthink it, I leaned in and kissed him. The kiss was clumsy, desperate, like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally let go. Ezra's lips were soft, warm, tasting faintly of strawberry chapstick. And for a moment, the world fell away. No guilt, no fear, just him. Then I pulled back, my heart racing, panic clawing at my chest. I'm sorry, I stammered, standing so fast I nearly tripped over the coffee table. I shouldn't have. Caleb, Ezra said, his voice calm but firm, standing to meet me. Don't do that. Don't run. I shook my head, my hands trembling. You don't get it. This isn't me. I can't. Why not? His eyes were fierce now, not angry but pleading. Why can't this be you? Why can't you want this? I paced the small living room, my thoughts a tangle of my dad's voice, my own shame, and the undeniable pull I felt toward Ezra. Because it's wrong, I said, the words tasting bitter. Because I was raised to believe it's wrong. Ezra stepped closer, his voice steady. And what do you believe? I stopped, my breath ragged. What did I believe? I'd spent so long dodging that question, hiding behind my dad's rules, my town's judgment. But here, with Ezra, I felt alive in a way I never had. I looked at him, his open face, his unwavering gaze, and I knew I couldn't lie anymore. I believe in you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And I think I believe in us. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The kiss had cracked something open in me, and though I was still terrified, I let myself lean into it. Ezra was patient, never pushing, but always there, his hand brushing mine when we walked to class, his sketches left on my pillow, his laugh filling the apartment. We didn't label what we were. We didn't need to. It was enough to steal moments, a shared coffee, a late-night movie, a quiet walk through Asheville's autumn streets, leaves crunching under our feet. But the world wasn't as kind as Ezra. My dad kept texting, his messages growing sharper, demanding I come home for Thanksgiving. I ignored them, but each one felt like a weight, pulling me back to a life I didn't want. I started having nightmares, me dad's voice echoing, calling me a sinner, while Ezra stood just out of reach, his face fading into shadow. One evening, Ezra dragged me to a local open mic night at a coffee shop, a cozy spot with mismatched chairs and fairy lights. He was performing, strumming his guitar and singing a song he'd written about chasing dreams in a world that tried to cage them. His voice was raw, haunting, and I couldn't take my eyes off him. The crowd loved him, clapping wildly, but all I could think was how much I wanted to be part of his world fully, without fear. Afterward, we sat in the back, sharing a slice of pie. You were amazing, I told him, meaning it. He grinned, his cheeks flushed. Thanks. Means a lot. Coming from you. I hesitated, then reached for his hand under the table. I'm trying. Ezra. I'm trying to be brave. His fingers tightened around mine. You already are. But bravery wasn't enough to shield us from reality. A week later, I got a call from my mom. My dad was coming to Asheville. He'd booked a flight, determined to fix me, to drag me back to Virginia. My stomach dropped as she spoke, her voice heavy with worry. He's angry. Caleb, she said. He found your roommate's Instagram. He saw the pride flag. I felt sick. Ezra's social media was an explosion of color paintings, protest photos, him smiling under a rainbow flag at a local pride event. It wasn't a secret, but I'd never thought my dad would look. I'd never thought he'd care enough to hunt me down. Ezra was in the kitchen when I hung up, chopping vegetables for dinner. I told him everything, my words spilling out in a rush. He listened, his face calm, but his eyes dark with concern. When's he coming? He asked. Tomorrow, I said, my voice shaking. I don't know what to do. He set the knife down, pulling me into a hug. You don't have to face him alone. I'm here. I clung to him, my face buried in his shoulder, breathing in the scent of paint and cedar. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting this battle by myself. The next day, my dad arrived. He showed up at our apartment unannounced, his face a mask of disapproval as he took in the cluttered space. The pride flag above Ezra's desk. Ezra was at class. Thank God. But I still felt exposed. Like my dad could see every secret I'd tried to hide. Caleb, he said, his voice cold. Pack your things. You're coming home. I stood my ground. My hands clenched. I'm not going anywhere. His eyes narrowed. This place. These people. They're poisoning you. You're not yourself. Maybe I'm finally myself. I shot back, surprising even me. Maybe I'm done pretending to be what you want. He stared at me, his face hardening. You're making a mistake. You'll regret this. I thought of Ezra's sketches, his laugh, the way he made me feel like I could be whole. No, I said. I won't. My dad left without another word, his footsteps echoing down the hall like a door slamming on my past. I stood in the middle of the apartment, my heart pounding, feeling both lighter and heavier than ever. I'd stood up to him, but the cost was still sinking in. He'd always been the voice in my head, the one telling me I wasn't enough. Now, that voice was quieter, but it wasn't gone. Ezra came home an hour later, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his eyes scanning my face. What happened? He asked, dropping his bag. I told him everything, me dad's anger, my defiance, the way I'd finally said what I'd been holding back for years. Ezra listened, his expression shifting from worry to pride. You did good, Caleb, he said, pulling me into a hug. You did real good. I let myself sink into his embrace, my hands gripping the back of his shirt. I'm scared, I admitted. What if he's right? What if I'm wrong? Ezra pulled back, his hands on my shoulders. You're not wrong. You're you. And that's more than enough. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk. I didn't hear from my dad, but my mom called, her voice soft and cautious, saying she was proud of me for standing up for myself. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Ezra and I grew closer, our connection deepening in ways I hadn't expected. We'd cook dinner together, his hip bumping mine as we moved around the tiny kitchen. We'd sit on the fire escape, talking about everything and nothing, his dreams of opening an art studio, my hopes of working in conservation, the life we might build together. But the fear lingered. Asheville was progressive, but it wasn't a bubble. We'd get looks, sometimes holding hands in public, laughing too close at a coffee shop. Once, a guy muttered something ugly as we passed, and I felt Ezra tense beside me. He didn't say anything, just squeezed my hand tighter, but it reminded me how fragile this happiness was. One night, Ezra suggested we go to a local LGBTQ+ support group. Just to check it out, he said. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. I was nervous, my palms sweaty as we walked into the community center. The room was warm, filled with people of all ages, some laughing, some quiet, all carrying their own stories. A woman with short purple hair introduced herself as Mia, the group leader, and welcomed us with a smile. I stayed silent, but Ezra shared a bit about himself, his voice steady as he talked about coming out in high school, the pain and the freedom of it. Afterward, a guy named Sam, maybe a few years older than us, approached me. First time? He asked, his voice kind. I nodded, unsure what to say. It gets easier, he said. Not perfect, but easier. You've got a good one there. He nodded toward Ezra, who was laughing with Mia across the room. I smiled, my chest warming. Yeah, I do. Back at the apartment, Ezra was buzzing with energy, talking about the people we'd met, the stories we'd heard. "See," he said, flopping onto the couch. "You're not alone in this. None of us are." I sat beside him, my knee brushing his. "I don't know how you do it," I said. "You're so sure of yourself." He laughed, but it was softer this time. "I'm not. Not always. I just decided a long time ago that I'd rather be scared and honest than safe and lying." I looked at him, the way the lamplight caught his features, and I felt that pull again, the one that had started with a sketch and a kiss. "I want that," I said. "I want to be honest." He turned to me, his eyes searching. "Then be honest with me. Right now." My heart raced, but I didn't look away. "I'm falling for you," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "And it scares the hell out of me, but I don't want to stop." Ezra's face broke into a smile, soft and radiant. "Good," he said, leaning in, "because I'm falling for you too." This time, when we kissed, it wasn't desperate or uncertain. It was sure, steady, like a promise we were both ready to keep. The next morning, I woke to find Ezra sketching again, this time at the kitchen table. I leaned over his shoulder, expecting another portrait, but it was a landscape, a vibrant, swirling depiction of Asheville's mountains. Two figures standing hand in hand at the peak. "Is that us?" I asked, my voice quiet. He nodded, his pencil pausing. "It's how I see us. Together. Free." I kissed the top of his head, my heart full. For the first time, I believed I could be free too. Winter settled over Asheville, blanketing the city in frost and quiet. Ezra and I were inseparable now, our lives woven together in the small moments, shared scarves on cold walks, late-night talks about the future, his sketches piling up on my desk. But the world outside our apartment wasn't always kind. My dad's silence was a heavy presence, and I knew it wasn't over. Not really. One evening, we were at a bar with some friends from the support group, laughing over cheap beers and a jukebox blaring old rock. Ezra was telling a story, his hands animated, when a guy at the next table leaned over, his voice slurred and sharp. "Keep it down. Fags." The word hit like a slap. The table went quiet, our friends exchanging uneasy glances. Ezra's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. "Got a problem?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with steel. The guy sneered, standing. "Yeah, I got a problem with you flaunting that shit in my face." I felt my stomach drop, my hands clenching. I wanted to shrink, to disappear, like I always had. But Ezra stood, his eyes locked on the guy. "We're just living our lives. Man, maybe you should try it." The bartender stepped in before it escalated, kicking the guy out. But the moment lingered, sour and heavy. On the walk home, Ezra was quiet, his hands stuffed in his pockets. I reached for him, my fingers brushing his. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, but his smile was tight. "Just tired of it. You know. The looks. The comments. I want to live without having to fight for it." I squeezed his hand, my chest aching. "I'm sorry." He stopped, turning to face me. "Don't be. You're worth it. This," he gestured between us, "is worth it." The next day, Ezra suggested we take a trip, just the two of us. Somewhere quiet. He said, "No noise. No judgment. Just us." We drove out to the Blue Ridge Parkway, the mountains stretching endlessly before us, their peaks dusted with snow. We hiked a trail, our breath visible in the crisp air, until we reached a lookout point. The world felt vast, open, like we could be anything here. Ezra spread a blanket, and we sat, sharing a thermos of coffee. He pulled out his sketchbook, but instead of drawing, he handed it to me. "Your turn," he said. I laughed, nervous. "I'm no artist." "Doesn't matter. Draw what you see." I took the pencil, my hand shaky, and started sketching the mountains, the sky, the way Ezra's profile looked against the horizon. It was terrible, all jagged lines and smudges. But he grinned like it was a masterpiece. "You're getting better," he teased, leaning against me. I set the sketchbook down, my arm around him. "I'm getting better because of you." He looked at me, his eyes soft. "We're getting better together." Back in Asheville, reality crept back in. My dad sent an email, formal and cold, demanding I meet him in Charlotte for a talk. I showed it to Ezra, my hand shaking. "He's not going to stop," I said. Ezra read the email, his face unreadable. "You don't have to go." "I know," I said, "but maybe I need to. For me." He nodded, his hand finding mine. "Then I'm coming with you." I wanted to argue, to protect him from my dad's venom, but the thought of facing him alone was unbearable. "Okay," I said. "Together." The drive to Charlotte was quiet, the tension thick. Ezra held my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin, grounding me. When we arrived at the coffee shop where my dad was waiting, I felt like I was walking into a storm. He was already there, sitting stiffly at a corner table, his face carved from stone. He barely acknowledged Ezra, his eyes fixed on me. "Caleb," he said, "this needs to stop. You're throwing your life away." I took a deep breath, Ezra's presence steady beside me. "I'm not throwing anything away," I said. "I'm finally living." His jaw tightened. "This lifestyle, it's a sin. You know that." Ezra's hand tensed in mine, but he stayed silent, letting me speak. "Maybe it's a sin to you," I said, my voice steady despite the fear. "But to me, it's love, and I'm not giving that up." My dad stared at me, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. "You're choosing this over your family." "I'm choosing myself," I said, "and I hope one day you can see that." We left without another word, Ezra's hand in mine, the weight of my dad's gaze burning into my back. But as we stepped into the cold Charlotte air, I felt lighter, like I'd finally set something free. The drive back to Asheville was quiet, but not heavy. Ezra turned on the radio, some soft indie song filling the car, and I let myself breathe. For the first time, I felt like I'd claimed my life, not as my dad's son or the guy who followed rules, but as Caleb Messi, scared, but whole. Back at the apartment, Ezra pulled me into a hug, his arms strong around me. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I laughed, shaky. "I don't know what I'm doing." He pulled back, grinning. "Nobody does. But you're doing it anyway." Spring came, and with it, a new rhythm. Ezra and I were a couple now. No labels needed. Just us. We went to more support group meetings, made friends who felt like family, built a life that was ours. My dad didn't reach out again, but my mom started calling more, asking about Ezra, sending small gifts, a scarf, a book of poetry. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. One evening, Ezra surprised me with a gallery show. He'd been working on a series in secret, and when we walked into the small downtown space, I saw it, a collection of sketches and paintings. All of us. Me sleeping, us on the fire escape, our hands intertwined on the mountain trail. The final piece was a portrait of me, my eyes bright, a smile I didn't recognize, confident, free. I turned to him, my throat tight. "This is everything." He took my hand, his eyes shining. "You're my everything." Months later, we stood on the same lookout point in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the summer air warm and thick with the scent of pine. Ezra had his sketchbook, but he wasn't drawing. He was looking at me, his expression soft but serious. "Caleb," he said, taking my hands, "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want you in it. Every messy, beautiful moment." My heart swelled, and I laughed, tears in my eyes. I want that too. We kissed, the mountains stretching out before us, the world vast and open. I thought of that first morning, waking to Ezra sketching me, seeing me in a way I couldn't see myself. He'd shown me who I could be: brave, honest, loved. And with a single breath, everything had changed. We stayed there until the stars came out, talking about the life we'd built together. Unapologetically. It wouldn't be easy. The world would still judge, still push back. But we had each other, and that was enough. Back in Asheville, I started sketching too. Clumsy lines that Ezra praised like they were art. I drew us, over and over, not to capture perfection, but to hold on to the truth. We were enough. We were home.